Welcome to another episode of Uncertain Medics. My name is Adi and I'm a doctor and filmmaker. And today I have Nadia Kamil. Hi, Nadia.
Hi.
So do you want to give our viewers maybe just a quick intro of who you are and maybe what you're up to?
So I originally did my undergraduate degree, my BA at Cambridge in English literature and drama, and then I did a master's in theatre at the Central School of Speech and Drama, and then I was basically a comedian, writer, actor for about 13 years before I had a bit of a breakdown whilst living in Hollywood and decided that I wanted to go into medicine, and now I'm about to complete my fourth year of medicine, third year of graduate medicine, about to do my final year of medicine.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, I mean, you're basically doing the opposite of what I did, because I got into medicine, had a breakdown, and now I'm to the creative side. So that's really interesting. So Hollywood is in Hollywood in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I was living in LA. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what sort of happened, if you don't mind sort of talking about it, or kind of overview of that?
I moved there and I really loved living there and I miss it every day. It's summer all the time and I love summer. And also people there are very ambitious and kind of optimistic and very energetic, which I really like, because now I live in the Midlands, which is where ambition goes to die. It's not my favorite place. But when I was living there, I sort of had to start my career again, kind of from a starting point, because I'd established a bit of a profile here in the UK and I was doing pretty well, but then I had this opportunity to go to the States and I really wanted to go, so I did. But that having to sort of start almost from the beginning again made me realize I didn't really want to. I didn't want to hustle for it as so much, because I hate all of the hustle. I hate auditions and pitches and meetings and constantly having to sell yourself. And the bit that I love doing, which is the writing and the performing, is like 5% of your life.
Yeah.
And I sort of had this realization that I can still do that, but if I stop making it my living, then I'll take away all of the stuff that I don't like doing.
Yes. And
like I felt quite relieved about even that, so like as an epiphany of, oh my God, I can do the thing that I love, and if I stop making it the thing that brings bread to my table, then it's not going to feel horrible every day of like having the pressure of it, having to make it work for the career. Because I was doing all right, but it's just so stressful to be constantly having to tell yourself.
No, absolutely. And I sort of started my creative kind of journey about 2 years ago, and looking back, I think having the ability to put bread on the table has been a really good thing for me. I think maybe it's a case of, did I limit my creativity by still having that day job? Because so having medicine as a day job doesn't really sound like having a day job. So why medicine amongst other things you could have done?
There's lots of reasons for it. I think one of them is that I did a play once and I had to wear scrubs for it, and I just thought I looked really cute.
I mean, that's a stronger reason than a lot of people. So,
I was like, I look so good in these scrubs. I think I need to find a reason to wear them more often. So that's either like getting a job on like ER or becoming a doctor. I think a lot of the reasons are because I also felt like when you're working in the arts, that's all I ever really did before I sort of made that switch, you're living in a world of subjectivity, which is one of the good things about it, but it's also kind of one of the terrible things about it, especially if you're struggling with things like imposter syndrome and lack of confidence, which I really have suffered with. And I didn't really realize until I made the switch and was able to look back on it, how badly I suffered with it. And there's something about sort of medicine where it's like quite objective, even though it is a bit of an art. There is like, you make someone feel better or you don't. Whereas in comedy, you make someone laugh, you might make somebody else furious. But that's the subjectivity of it is kind of what's exciting, but also it's kind of relentless when you have a need to feel useful. So I really wanted to do something that was like objectively useful. Also, the Brexit vote happened, and Trump happened, and I just felt like we were about to have like a zombie apocalypse. And I only
Which
wish I
we
had that
kind of are
feeling.
now.
Yeah, if I'd had that feeling 1 year before, I'd already be practicing now as a doctor. So I was only 1 year too late with that feeling. But yeah, I felt like things were sort of, going a bit tits up, and I wanted to be ready for it. I wanted to be, when the apocalypse comes, that I get my own narrative arc. I'm not killed off in the first episode. And I think also there's a lot of things with medicine. I think like I need to feel like I'm being challenged. I need to feel like I'm always learning stuff. And I really like solving problems, which I think a lot of medicine is problem solving. And also I like to feel special. And I think that as doctors, you get to feel special. Like
all the
not
right
many
reasons.
people are asked, on a plane if they're there. No one's like, oh my God, do we have an architect on this flight?
So what is it like for someone like you? From my experience, creative people are very socially intelligent people, very observational, very good at solving problems and seeing issues for what they are. So what has been like for you, I guess, mainly in the clinical environments that you've been exposed to, coming from your background, has it been different to your peers? Have you found a way to communicate that to people? Has it been frustrating? And is it maybe driving some creative ideas for you in the future, etc.? How is that kind of going for you?
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting. And there's not a lot of people from a similar background to me, as in like have been a performer for so long. There are a few, right? There's a guy in my cohort who's a classical musician, and another one who's a session musician. But no one who's sort of come from a real performance background. And yeah, so I find things like OSCE is actually quite fun, which obviously a lot of the other students find them terrifying and awful, or the role plays that we have to do with patients, things like that. And I'm always having to sit there being like, don't volunteer. You're always doing it. It's always
God,
But because I don't want to be the person who's always like, please let me act.
I'll be the troubled relative, complaining.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always excited to do the role play. Also because I feel like I learn a lot when I do those things, because I feel it, viscerally. If you do a scene, then you've actually physically experienced that thing rather than just reading about how to break bad news. You've actually done it, even if it's not real. You've got a motor memory of it almost. And so that's been a big difference, especially with the undergraduates. So I'm doing the graduate medicine course, but we merged with the undergraduates for our clinical phase. And they are terrified of all like clinical interactions and the role plays and stuff like that. And often so the things they say are kind of, you're allowed to make mistakes when you're learning, but sometimes you think, wow, you really haven't learned any empathy yet.
Yes, empathy, emotional intelligence, observation, compassion, embracing uncertainty, all the normal human things,
Yeah, which obviously if you've lived for a long time before you go to university, you just pick a lot of that stuff up, especially if you've worked in any service industry, for example. I think that's where a lot of it that I've learned from, 4 years working in a pub in London. That's how you learn how to manage people's expectations.
Well, I guess being a doctor is a bit like being an actor. It's kind of, you're putting on performance, and when you're breaking bad news, or when you're communicating with colleagues, or answering complicated questions, etc. It is a bit like a performance, I find, and you can just see some people just struggle with it because they just don't have that sort of background or skills in that. They're very academic, but then they don't know how to communicate it. I think that's a real issue in healthcare. You have some very smart people who just don't know how to tell that story, and I think you can't really instigate change unless you can get the people on board and communicate that. So
I definitely agree.
So we're going to need people like you to change that. I've certainly struggled, I think, to push a lot of creative solutions in healthcare, and but I think it's changing slowly. And I think maybe post-COVID, that might accelerate a bit.
I think it's interesting because I think that medicine is such a sort of rapid moving field in terms of the science, but in terms of the social side of it, I do think it is quite far behind a lot of other things. I feel like I've been a little bit sort of hampered, a bit sort of dampened down, because I've got a bit too much personality. I think that medical schools and medical institutions can feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, because it feels a little bit, you know, like, oh, this idea of doctors as being better than other people, of being superhumans who are not, you know, they don't do the disgusting things that everybody else does. That they don't have mental illness. You know, a lot of stigma from that, I think, exists, and I hope that one of the positives that we can take from this absolute global disaster is that we can change these ideas about who people in healthcare are. Like, they are just other people doing their job, and they, you know, they have bad days, they have good days, they're funny, they can be sexual, you know, things like that. Obviously there's levels of appropriateness, but in terms of, like, I think there's an idea of, like, you can't ever imagine your doctor having a sexual relationship. It's like your parents, you know. It's like, no, they just were born out of an egg.
I know, we're humans too, so we can act like it and talk about that. So I guess now with COVID and everything going on, so for me anyway, you know, as a sort of aspiring creative, a lot of the projects that I was developing have sort of been sidelined or just put to the side, because currently, you know, no one's commissioning the big productions and the big ideas. And so for me, being a doctor is the thing that's keeping me going. It's the thing I'm most useful to do currently, I guess, in society. How is it for you moving forward? I mean, did you have a plan to sort of do half and half? Was it a case of focusing on one or the other, and has sort of COVID changed that perspective for you?
Yeah, I think I never really thought about being half and half. I thought kind of just, you know, train to be a doctor and then decide sort of how I'm going to figure it out. Although during my training, I've found that I've really appreciated the chance to go and work on the little days where I can find, where I'm offered little jobs to, like, travel down to London and do you know, a radio show in front of an audience for the BBC and things like that, or to make little video reports for whatever it is. Especially when I first started, because it was a completely different world to me, and I don't have any science background at all. I didn't do science A levels. So at the beginning of the course, I was completely overwhelmed, and I felt really stupid, which was a really horrible feeling, to feel just really thick.
Especially when they're like, they put you into these competition ratios, and they tell you, in my medical school, they told us who you were out of 100 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the deciles, you get
the deciles. Oh, it's just madness, you know.
And just feeling overwhelmed, and then being able to sort of travel down to London and for a day do a show and feel like, oh, I'm good at something. I'm not just an idiot. Has sort of buoyed me throughout my training. But then when this hit, because I was in this phase of my clinical training, which is really intense, it's 42 weeks, I think, of placement that we then get examined on next week. That's not happening. So that's a lot, like, non-stop 42 weeks of placement. Really intense. A lot to take in. It's all the specialities, you know, it's your obs and gynaes, your pediatrics.
Yes, I remember that.
Like everything, all in 1 year. Got a 6-year-old approaching. And then it's just stopped. We're taken off of placement. And then, do you want to say hi? She's a bit shy. It's my niece. We were just taken off of placement and nothing put in its place. Can you shut the door for me, please, Layla? Can you shut that door for me? Oh, thanks. And that was because I haven't done a lot of sort of work stuff in this clinical phase because it's been so busy, and then all of a sudden it's just gone and exams cancelled, and then there's nothing, and we haven't had a timeline or anything set up for what's going to happen, how we're going to move on, how we're going to get assessed. We've had nothing. Hopefully something will happen. I think we've got a webinar on Monday.
Oh, nice.
But we've just been sort of cast adrift with nothing. But the years above us graduated early. All the work was put into that. And the years below us, given this entirely online course, and us as these penultimate year medics, just been set adrift.
Oh, God.
And that's been really damaging to be like, to have your whole raison d'etre, your entire structure of your life thrown in a bin.
Wow. But I suspect you're probably more able, in theory, to cope with that because of your background, as opposed to the sort of scientific person who came into medicine who had this well-trodden path that they were hoping to follow, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, almost straight away, I sort of went, well, here's a chance for me to go back into doing some comedy stuff. Although obviously the pandemic's shut down the entire live comedy scene and a lot of broadcast stuff as well. But yeah, that was my instinct straight away, was I'll just go back into my old job, which I have been doing. Like, I've been producing content, so much content, which has sort of been keeping me sane. But at the same time, it's like I was on this mission, I was on this treadmill.
Yeah.
And it's just someone's just stopped it straight away, and I've been tossed off the back of it and thrown into all the dumbbells at the back of the gym. I've never been into a gym. Is that what happens in gyms?
I think so. They tell me.
So I think, it's been just so disruptive in terms of like that feeling like you're in this inertia of moving forward, this momentum that's just been suddenly stopped. And, it's like the earth stops spinning and you're just tossed off. The gravity has failed you. And
that is difficult. I mean, I've been very lucky to obviously be working, and then, to continue working through the lockdown and have that routine and have that familiarity and that kind of certainty. So I can certainly see where that's coming from, especially when you went from that kind of creative world into something scientific, something you thought, yeah, this is it. And then you're suddenly in the middle of this pandemic and you're not like on the front line, you're not like kind of feel like you're progressing or moving forward.
And I would love to be on the front line, but because everything's been switched, because there's no electives, there's no outpatients, and I've volunteered and I've done all the contracts and everything to do bank work in one of my local trusts, but they're overstaffed because everything's cancelled and everything's just on medicine. So it's even a struggle even to get working, even as an HCA or an assistant, because the workload has dramatically changed, and hopefully that's going to start evolving and we can get back to doing some more.
Have you, I mean, so I saw your video you did about NHS 70 a couple of years back, and do you feel like there's something you may already be working on, something or a series of things that you can do given your writing and comic and producing ability as a way of helping people through this crisis? Is there something sparking in your mind about a sort of COVID type thing? Is that something that you feel might be something you can do to kind of feel that usefulness perhaps in this crisis? Or
I think I had that instinct at the start, and then to be honest, it mostly became about just keeping myself sane. Because I think that was what I wanted to do, because I really craved that feeling of usefulness. Of utility, that's a better word, isn't it? And to have that sort of taken away and to be left untethered was quite now it's more about just like I'm trying to make sure that I can keep my mind healthy. And if making people laugh, I think, is one of those things where you can get that almost instant feedback of like, you make something and somebody thinks it's funny, then you're like, well, I did something that made me feel good, that made you feel good, that makes me feel good.
No, but I've seen, as I mentioned to you earlier, I've seen some of your videos. They're hilarious, and it's why I reached out. So congrats on that. And no pressure at all, but it'd be great to see a COVID comedy emerge from this crisis in some way by Nadia Kamil. So whenever you're ready, we'd love to see that.
It's a hard thing to joke about, isn't it? You can only really joke about all the sort of weird things that happen, like the fact that everyone was doing a conga yesterday, social distancing conga. Get a grip.
Do you are you on TikTok? Do you do stuff on that, or?
I just joined TikTok.
Okay,
That's the COVID thing. Just joined it.
Because I remember just before COVID hit, I went to this talk around creativity in healthcare, and they said basically if you're in healthcare and you want to get out to, you want to build a brand, then get on TikTok because it's not saturated yet. And I just joined it too, actually. There's some funny stuff on there, and it's a good time to sort of I think, connect with people during lockdown. So, you know.
How's your engagement?
Well, no, I've done nothing.
Oh, you're just watching.
No, I've just been watching, but I will, you know, I will try and come up with some stuff. You know, I've got some ideas. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out how you use it. You know,
it's not too complicated, but you can do so much
I
with it.
know. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a bit overwhelming, I think.
I'm one of those people who has to look at every single combination of what you can do and
Yeah.
then do it, you know, so I can make sure I'm utilizing it to the full. So, because there's some great videos on there and people are like natural editors, you know, it's great,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff. There's an American ophthalmologist he's just joined it.
Oh, is it Dr. Glaucon-Fem?
Yeah, Dr. Glaucon.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's
So funny.
Yeah, he's good. So, well, maybe there's space for us to get on there and
Yeah,
and
maybe.
compete. Yeah. Good. Well, we can end on that note if you like, unless there's anything else you wanted to mention or discuss, or no.
Not
Okay.
really.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I really hope your webinar goes well next week. And you get
thank you. Me too.
And I look forward to whatever you come forward with in the future. We need more creative people in healthcare.
Yes. And maybe we can collaborate sometime.
Oh, I'd love to collaborate. We should definitely do that. So, well, thank you very much, and then all the best for the future.
You're very welcome.
Great. So that's been another episode of Uncertain Medics, and we'll catch you in the next one.